Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Alan Badeau. Welcome to another great show of AI Today. Here we're exploring how AI can be applied to businesses, how you can use it to save a lot of time, and even in your personal life. And we're also looking at some of the nuances and some of the challenges that we run into often when we're trying to deploy AI into our system. And this week's show's a little bit different. We're gonna have one of my favorite guests on the show, Miss Django Day, who's gonna help us understand, even from the business side, some of the ramifications and challenges that we may run into, and of course some of the opportunities, so that you can actually use it to gain a strategic advantage. Now, we all know, and I've said this many times, that AI can impact any type of business, really anywhere in its maturity, and it is a huge game changer if it's used the right way. Now, there's been a lot of negative press out there about companies that are starting to pull back on some of their AI investments, or companies that are not getting as much ROI as they expected. Now, we've talked about this, and if you've watched the show, then you're already, ahead of the game, because don't overpromise. Don't try to do too much with it. Really pick your battles and where you want to deploy it. And if you follow those simple strategies, you're going to be very successful. Now, one of the important things that we're going to look at with Jen as we walk through some of these opportunities is, how do you pick a tool? How do you figure out what you want to do? How do you figure out, what your team is going to do with it after you've chosen one? And so those are some of the basic business decision topics that we're going to look at. We're not going to necessarily dive deep into the technical. We've done that a couple of times, and we'll continue to do that. But in the next show, we're going to look at how we can take, our normal processes, how we can make a good choice, and which one do we choose? Because, quite honestly, everybody has to walk through it for themselves. They've got to figure out what's the best thing that's going to work for their business. And we always say, not one tool works for everything. And so Jen's going to help us from the human side to look at, the processes and how you adapt, some of those things. We're going to talk about how do you make sure you hire the right people, because that is a challenge. There's not a lot of universities that are teaching, really what I would call practical AI. And by that, I mean, how do you deploy it into a big environment? How do you use it? How do you, operate it, really productize, AI? They're teaching them a lot of great stuff, how to develop algorithms, how to develop software around that. But oftentimes, like challenges that we've had in the past, we forget that there's a human side to AI. That's really the only way that we're going to be successful, especially in business, right? I mean, it's trying to make sure that we've got the right pairing of the human with the AI, and it's the exact same thing if you're trying to bring AI into your business so that you can use it. We're going to talk about, look at some of the basic programming things, and what decisions we have to go through to arrive at that, and then also, how we can really compound it, add a whole bunch of AI things together to solve a larger problem. And so the human element for today's show is really going to be driven home, and we're going to work through that with Jen. Now, taking a step back really quick and looking at some of the non-technical requirements that are going to be out there, I always tell people when I hire folks, I am looking for really, the non-technical skill sets as opposed to the technical ones. And why is that? It's because, AI is so new. I'm going to teach them the things that I want them to know. So think about that. If you've got a great organization, you already know where I'm coming from on this. The realities are that I want people that can solve problems. I want folks that are creative. They've got to have some sort of innovative, capability, in there. And then also they've got to be able to communicate, because the realities are, if you can't communicate with a human, it's a lot harder really to communicate with AI. And the reason is because, we talk about prompt engineering all the time, but it's hard to get the computer to do what you want it to do. ChatGPT and some of those other tools that are out there, Cohere's, like I said, Cohere and Claude and Perplexity and all those other ones that are out there, they're fantastic at really helping the human along to drive some of the messages home and help with prompt engineering. And heck, I know ChatGPT and a few others have help me with my prompt type capability now. And that really has gone a long way. But I am going to teach the folks that I hire how to use the AI, how to use the tools that I have, how to develop around the tools that I've developed, and really how to make sure that the human is in there. And there's a lot of skills, and it doesn't matter what the field that you're in. It's pretty much all the same, right? Because there's always going to be some nuances and some specialties that we're going to look at. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, as well, and then looking at some industry, specific knowledge on, really, applying it to, certain types of fields and those sort of things. So today's show is really going to lay the foundation for that. These are topics that we could spend, 3, 4, or 5 shows on, and we may as we deep dive into some of those things. But the primary goal of today is to say, okay, you know what? I know I need AI. I know I can use AI. I know I can save money, and I know the people that I can have them do so much more work that it's kind of silly for me to still be on the sidelines with some of those things. Now, of course, it depends on your industry in some cases, or on the government side. I get that, but it's trying to figure out, how do I not scare my employees to think that, they're bringing in AI. That means that our days are numbered, right? That's usually the first response that we often get. And, you can understand that from a variety of perspectives, right? Because, one, oftentimes managers don't communicate very well. And so when you bring in something that either they don't expect or that is a new technology, that's always going to be their first conclusion. And so, how do you communicate to your team that, you're bringing AI in for a specific reason? And that's so that you can really expand in your market and do more without having to go hire a bunch of people. That's one of the first challenges. And then it's like, now that I have AI, in there, how do I get my team to embrace it? How do I get them to use it? How do I make sure that there are folks that are not trying to sabotage the deployment of AI simply because, they didn't get a choice, they didn't have a say in the tool that was picked? There's a million different reasons out there why, but, we all know that sometimes those are going to be the folks that, no matter what you do, you're gonna have a challenge on your hand with the human perspective. And so, walking through some of those ideas and what you have to do in order to really make sure that everybody in your organization is bought in. Huge challenge, very difficult from the human side. And we're gonna talk through some of those things. And then also, how do you really organizationally use it to its full potential and to get the most out of it? Now, I can tell you from my experience, when I first brought in, AI into my organization and previously in some of the other ones that I worked at, it really was a challenge at times, and not just, technical. The technical parts were easy. Picking the tool was pretty easy. You go down through, you've got a whole bunch of checklist things that you wanted to do. And when it does it, you say, yeah, that's great. It can do that. Or this other tool can't, so it's out, right? That's pretty cut and dry. And it's easy when you're human to say, oh, no, we don't like that tool, or it's gone. We're not using that. Easy. But then when you have humans that you're going to want to use it, then, of course, that's where the barriers will often, really pop up, and you've got to be careful in how you do that. And so, we're going to talk about, after a tool has been chosen with the team, then, what's that process look like that you're going to roll it out and that you're going to use it? The realities are that the first time your team hears that there is, a new AI tool that they've already selected and that they're already bringing in, you're in trouble. There's no other way to put it. You're in trouble. You've not embraced the golden rule of AI for humans, and that's letting others that are going to use it have a little bit of say, have a little bit of some ideas on how they would want to use it. If you don't get buy-in before you are doing that, you're going to have some challenges. So we're going to deep dive into that, and I think that's going to help a lot of folks, really get past that first step and saying, okay, what do I do first? Is it the chicken or the egg? Is it the AI or the human? Is it the tool or, the boardroom? Whatever. We're going to give you some tips and really try to help you, overcome some of those, and really some lessons learned on the best way to do those sort of things. And then the last piece we're going to look at is, how do executives of an enterprise really start to make sure that they understand how their team is using it as well as how they're using it themselves. I'm lucky enough, the CEOs that I've worked with in the past, very technology forward. They loved it. They would use it. They play with it. As much as I would, and that's a huge advantage. But it's really hard though if you're a technologist or you're on a beta, or a your first deployment team inside the company to understand sometimes what the CEO is thinking if they haven't even tried some of those tools. So it's really focusing on how to get the executives to buy into it, to use it, and to really showcase it from the top down. That's going to be a huge important thing. And then also, as you'll see, people with different personalities have different ways of using the AI. And in some cases, they feel more empowered. In other cases, they're a little bit more gun shy because they have a hard time sometimes picking an answer. They get surrounded. They want more data. Well, guess what? AI is going to give you a lot of data. And so being able to really help folks pull that answer out, look through all the AI data, overcome some of those challenges is going to be key. So stay with us. We've got an exciting show for you this week. And, Jen Godet will be with us, and, stay tuned, and we'll see you in a few.